Look for the house of God, and you will find your way home. Since the early 1940s, seasoned fishermen heading for home in the Gulf of Mexico and looking for John's Pass have reminded each other what is still sound advice to all of us today. Look for the house of God, and you will find your way home. Those fishermen were referring to the beacon high atop what was then the only church for miles in either direction, Church by the Sea. Welcome. I am Don Wooldridge, and I will be your host for this brief look at the history of Church by the Sea. Our story begins over 75 years ago in the winter of 1943. Just a little over 1 year into the United States' involvement in World War II, the Great Depression was coming to an end, U.S. penny was struck in steel for the first time, and a gallon of gas cost 15 cents. It was also in 1943 that a snowbird from Wisconsin, Reverend Philip H. Ralph, intrigued by a suggestion from several of his friends, decided to knock on as many doors as he could around John's Pass and talk to the people to discover if there was any interest in church services on the beaches. The overwhelmingly positive response touched his heart and encouraged him to stay and share the Word of God in Florida. At that time, the only building in the area large enough to hold any significant number of people was the Fishermen's Union Hall just south of John's Pass. The building was nothing more than a converted storefront with a leaky roof and a few benches with no backs in the storeroom. Nevertheless, on February 6, 1944, Reverend Ralph gathered together 20 adults and 20 children to participate in the first church services on John's Pass. The following Sunday, attendance more than doubled, and what would eventually become Church by the Sea was well on its way to becoming something very special for both God and the community. The founding members of our church made it clear from the beginning that they wanted to proclaim on the beaches that God is here. By May of 1944, the few but faithful cobbled together $350 to put a down payment on what was, in their words, a sand dune at the corner of Gulf Boulevard and 137th Avenue Circle. The church was officially organized in June, but there was still much to do. The founding members also stated profoundly that Church by the Sea was to be a church for the community. The representatives that turned the first shovels of dirt for the new building were chosen from people from many different denominations and backgrounds. The charter members themselves came from all walks of life. It was Reverend Ralph's belief that much of the work should be done by church members. Many of the founding members of the community worked on the building. Reverend Ralph himself also built the cathedral lights and the church altar that are still enjoyed in the sanctuary today. Construction took approximately 2 years. It was Easter Sunday in the year 1946 that the first church service was held in the current sanctuary. Even then, the roof was temporary, and both the concrete walls and the cement floor were bare. But the community of believers that started with those 20 faithful 2 years earlier had finally found their way home. After that came the tower. Again, reflecting the Church by the Sea as a church for the community, the tower was built to look like a bird in deference to the stories told by local fishermen of a mythical bird that watched over them. Now that there was Church by the Sea, they could also count on God to watch over them and lead them home. A beacon was placed on the top of the tower where the cross stands now, reminding the fishermen to tell all new sailors, "Find the house of God, and you will find your way home."